Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's webinar titled Ebike Basics. I am very excited for tonight's presentation. I am joined by my colleague, Matt Miller from Ecology Action. And as a quick notice, we are recording this presentation and we will be sharing it on our YouTube page in case you would like to reference it later. We're going to go ahead and get started rather quickly. I do appreciate folks that are already providing some responses in the chat, letting us know where you are tuning in from, and also sharing what your experience is with Ebikes. So in terms of the agenda, we have divided this presentation into two portions where I will be walking you through the Electrify Your Ride application that is available on the Central Coast Community Energy website. Specifically, I'll be walking you through some of the documentation that you may need and also just walking you through some of those basic eligibility requirements that you should know about before you go ahead and fill out an application for an electric bike rebate. For the second portion of the presentation, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Matt Miller from Ecology Action. He is a local program specialist who I consider to be a great expert on e-bikes, and he can give you the information that you need to help you feel comfortable finding the bike that is right for you and that fits within your desired budget. For the last portion of the presentation, if time permits, we will be conducting a Q&A session. So we do ask that you provide your questions in one of two ways. The first of which is providing your question through the Q&A tool that is found on the lower portion of your screen. We ask that you provide your questions through the Q&A box instead of the chat box because that does help us monitor questions a bit more easily. Later, my colleague Matt will be sharing an alternative for you to provide your questions. It's a really cool tool known as Slido, and that's going to allow you to provide your questions through a mobile app. And that's also going to allow you to vote for a question that is quite common, right? The questions that would be upvoted by the rest of the audience members that are listening to tonight's presentation. I'll go ahead and defer to my colleague later in the second half of this presentation to share more about how to use that app. Let's begin with who we are as Central Coast Community Energy. So we are, in fact, a local government agency, and we serve roughly 33 cities and counties across the Central Coast service area. And as you can see here on the screen, basically we serve everywhere from Santa Cruz County all the way down to Santa Barbara County, with a couple of exceptions. And those exceptions are King City, the county of San Luis Obispo, so all of the unincorporated communities in the county, Atascadero, Lompoc, and lastly, the city of Santa Barbara that actually has its own clean energy agency, such as ours, that serves the city's residents. But if you live in any of these communities on the map that are shaded in dark green or in dark orange, then chances are you are a customer of Central Coast Community Energy, and there are a couple of ways for you to verify that. But unless you haven't indicated to us that you would like to opt out and not participate in our agency service, I would say that the chances are pretty high that you are a current customer of Central Coast Community Energy. So a lot of folks often wonder, how exactly do we work with PG&E or Edison? And many may assume that we are here to replace them altogether, when that is in fact not true. As you can see here in the graphic, we actually work with them in a shared service to provide your monthly energy service to you, whether you are a residential or a commercial customer. Our job specifically is to determine where your energy is coming from, and the name of that service is called Electric Generation Service. PG&E or Edison are still responsible for maintaining all of the lines. They maintain all of the infrastructure, and if there is an outage, for example, or a public power safety shutoff, that is something that they are still responsible for responding to. And lastly, they are still responsible for sending you the monthly energy bill. At the end of the day, you do receive a shared service. There is no disruption to your service from the time that you began receiving this shared service, and it comes at no additional cost to you. Our rates are actually competitive with PG&E or Edison's electric generation rates, such that you are saving roughly 50 to 75 cents per your monthly bill because we apply a 2% discount off of the generation rates. The other value that we provide to you as a shared customer is that you get to participate in a longer list of options of rebates, incentives, or grants that are available to all of our customers. So if you like some of the programs from PG&E or Edison, you also have additional options through Central Coast Community Energy. One of those popular programs that I'm referencing is known as Electrify Your Ride, which is the topic of my portion of the presentation. And this one is really a one-stop shop where you can apply into one of four incentives. You can find the application on our website, and you can apply into one of these four measures. Of course, if you would like to apply into all four of them as a residential customer, you're more than welcome to do so. You can apply to reimburse a portion of the cost for the purchase or lease of a new or used electric vehicle. You can reimburse the portion of a cost of a new electric bike, which will be the main focus of this presentation. You could also reimburse the majority of the costs associated with a charger, specifically a level 2 charger that is network enabled. You could also reimburse the costs associated with any of the work that's necessary for installing the charger. Perhaps you need to replace or upgrade your panel, for example, or do some electrical work that's associated with the installation of the charger. So we can provide a reimbursement that covers that cost as well. In terms of the electric bike application, I would say that it's fairly straightforward in terms of what you need to be eligible for the program. As you see here in the list, we just ask that you make the purchase within this fiscal year, which for us is roughly between October and November, from October of 2021 to November of 2022. We also ask that you be a current Central Coast Community Energy customer. And the quickest way to verify this is to check your most recent energy bill, whether that's through PG&E or Southern California Edison. You can easily look to the first page and see if we appear as one of the line items. We specifically appear as Central Coast Community Energy electric generation charges, because again, we are responsible for determining where your energy is coming from. Another way you can verify it rather quickly is by giving us a call. If you do know your PG&E or SCE account number, you can go ahead and share that with an energy advisor through the call, and they can quickly check in the records to see if you are a current customer. You could also, you will also need to ensure that you are the one member in your household that is applying into this rebate for the first time. We often get the question from folks who have roommates, for example, or perhaps you are a member of the family, but you're not necessarily the name that appears on the account. You actually don't necessarily need to have the name, or your name doesn't necessarily need to be the one that's on the account. You actually just need to make sure that you live in a residence that is a customer of Central Coast Community Energy. In other words, you need to live in a residence that does have an account with Central Coast Community Energy, and you just provide us your address in the application, and we can just verify on the back end that the residence that you have provided is or does have an account with Central Coast Community Energy. What you'll need to do is just make sure that your house, first of all, does have an account, and just make sure that you're the first person applying for this rebate, because we only provide up to one rebate per household. Also, just make sure that the e-bike was purchased new. Currently, we are not supporting the purchase of used or of used electric bikes. Also, just make sure to provide a receipt of the electric bike purchase. That's one of the main pieces that you'll need for the application. So in order to do that, just make sure to scan the receipt or get a digital copy by email and then upload it into the application. You could also take a photo and submit that with the rest of the application. There are two different types of amounts that you can qualify for. The base incentive provides up to 50% of the cost, not to exceed $500 for the purchase that you have made. And this is a base incentive, as I mentioned. You basically just need to meet the basic eligibility requirements. And again, to submit an application, you would need to do it online through our website. The other level that you can qualify for is based on income. So if you want to receive up to 75% of the cost, but not to exceed $1,000, you can verify that you fall within 200 to 400% of the federal poverty line. We do have what those maximum income limits are per household size available on our website. We do have it in the form of a chart that allows you to see and understand if you would qualify for the enhanced incentive based on your household's annual gross income. If perhaps the income qualification incentive does not necessarily apply to you, but you're still looking to enhance your incentive, we do offer an additional $100 if you made the purchase of your new e-bike within our service area from a local shop. And so when I say local shop, I'm specifically referring to a locally owned bike shop, such as perhaps if you live in Santa Cruz, a store such as the Bicycle Trip, or if you live in SLO County, such as Cambria, the Cambria Bike Store, for example, or the Foothill Cyclery. These are bike shops that are locally owned, and we're effectively looking to support our local shops here in the Central Coast through this enhanced $100 rebate. So going back to the income qualification amount that you can qualify for, there are a couple of ways that you can verify that you would qualify for this amount. First of all, there are discount programs for customers needing assistance paying their utility bills, and these are known as the California Alternative Rates for Energy program or the Family Electric Rate Assistance programs, both of which you can apply through with PG&E or Southern California Edison. These are two utilities that both offer this program. We completely honor these programs on our end as well. So if you participate in these programs, that proves to us that you would qualify for the enhanced incentive. You can also submit a photo or a copy of your most recent pay stub, and that's going to help us determine if you fall within some of these income requirements that we've mentioned on the website. Say you don't necessarily have a pay stub that you can share, you can also provide your most recent 1040 tax form, or you can provide documentation showing that you actively participate in retirement or Social Security benefits. You can find more information about some of these income guidelines on our website. Specifically, I'm referring to the table of annual gross household income per family size. You can find that table, that chart that's available on our website, and that's going to give you a good idea of whether you qualify for this enhanced incentive or not. There are a couple of other ways that you can qualify for the enhanced incentive as well, and you'll see these options appear on the application. We're really just looking to see if you participate in a similar government assistance program that had already required you to verify your income using similar means. So effectively, the idea is that we want to simplify this process for you. If you've already verified your income qualification through some other organization, some other government agency, we'd hate to have you repeat the process again with us. So we're trying to avoid redundancy in this particular situation. So for example, if you already participate in one of the programs that you see here on the list, let me just name an example, like the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, otherwise known as LIHEAP, or if you participate in the food stamp program, just show us documentation that you currently participate in those programs. Again, you would have to submit a photo. Maybe you can scan it through your printer, or you can scan it through your phone. And just make sure to upload that with the application and just indicate that you participate in one of these programs. And that's going to indicate to us that you qualify for that 75% incentive, again, not to exceed $1,000. So just a summary of what the application process would look like. We just, again, ask that you make sure that you understand that you've met all of the eligibility requirements. As I had shown in one of the first slides, just make sure that you are a customer, make sure that you have all of the documentation that you need, and that you're purchasing a new e-bike within the time frame that we have provided. So just make sure that you made that purchase between October 1st of 2021 to November 15th of 2022. At this moment, we still have plenty of funds remaining, so you do have time to think about the type of e-bike that you want to buy before you submit an application. So we'd hate for folks to rush to make a decision. You still have time to make that decision to submit an application. So once you're ready, you have all the documentation you need. Perhaps you also want to submit any income documentation to show that you qualify for that enhanced incentive. Just make sure to start on the application. You can find it through our website. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share the link to that page where you can find the application during this webinar, just so that you can have it for reference. And I'm also going to be sharing some of these resources in an email after this presentation. Once you get started on the application, make sure to ensure that you've finished it. We currently do not have a save function, so that if you want to exit that application and come back to it later, you're actually gonna have to start from scratch, because we don't have a save function right now. You'll have to just work on the application from start to finish in one sitting. So after we receive your application, you'll receive confirmation through email, and then we'll go ahead and start processing your application. At this moment, we are receiving a lot of applications from folks in the community. So at this time, you may have to wait up to 45 days or more to receive confirmation that you are officially approved to receive the rebate for the program. Just know that it will take some time. We do get those types of questions a lot from the community, and we just want to reassure folks that we are working as hard as we can to make sure that we can process all of these applications. So after you get approved for the rebate that you are seeking, we will be sending you that rebate through the mail. Just make sure that you've provided the correct address to receive that check. Sometimes we get folks that don't cash in their check, and we do have to follow up with you to make sure that you will be in fact using the check to reimburse your electric bike purchase. So just make sure to be on the lookout for that. And if you think that a lot of time has passed since you've received approval for the rebate, just make sure to reach out to us, and we'll try to figure out what's going on. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. I do want to give the remainder over to my colleague, Matt Miller. But before I conclude, I just want to share this slide really quickly. You can reach out to us throughout the service area. We do have energy advisors that specifically serve our customers in the PG&E service area, as well as energy advisors that serve our customers who are based in the Edison service area. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and quickly pass it over to my colleague, Matt Miller, to provide an intro to Ebikes. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Oswaldo. Yeah, I'll go ahead and get my screen fired up here. Just got to pull yours down, and then I'll get mine up there. All right. Have you confirm, Oswaldo, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Oswaldo, for the intro, and thanks to 3CE for bringing us out to support this monthly webinar. We're really excited to be here and provide the e-bike basics and an introduction to e-bikes. It's a big, fascinating, fun world, and we've got a lot of really great content to go through. So thanks for being here, everybody, joining us on your Tuesday evening. So as Oswaldo mentioned, we are going to be using Slido, which is a fun interactive tool that allows this presentation to not just have me talk at you, but have you participate a little bit. We've got some word clouds, we've got some Q&A, we've got some polls. So what I'd like everybody to do right now is, with a smartphone or a tablet, go ahead and scan that QR code and get Slido loaded on your device. Or if you're tuning in on a computer, you can go to slido.com and punch in the code 3C bikes or 3C Ebikes. And we're gonna do a little warm up here and just get a little bit of audience interaction going. We wanna know a little bit about your e-bike experience. So once again, you can scan this QR code or go to the website and join us over there. And we're curious where you're at with your e-bike experience. Have you ridden one before? Do you own one? You've never tried one before? Let's get a sense of where people are coming in from. We've got folks down in SLO, we've got people in Santa Cruz, Felton, I saw Paso Robles, so we're spread out a little bit across the Central Coast. Okay, so far we've got a good mix of people. I've ridden an e-bike and I have not tried an e-bike. and I own an e-bike. And it might be in this area, we had Jump operating in Santa Cruz for a little while, and I know Santa Barbara just got B-Cycle going, but bike share isn't widespread yet across this area. So, okay, awesome. So a bit of a mix here in the crowd. That's awesome. Keep the Slido handy. We're going to be going back and forth over there quite a bit throughout tonight's presentation. But let me tell you who I am, so you know who this guy talking to you is. So I'm Matt Miller. I work with Ecology Action. I've been there for 4.5 years, and I run bike programs in Santa Cruz County primarily. I do a little bit of work in Monterey County too, but I've been a bike commuter for 14 years and an e-bike rider and owner for the last 4 years. And I can't really get enough of it. It was actually a Jump bike that opened up my eye and my mind to the power of e-bikes and what they can do to change how you get around. So I'm really excited to dive into today's presentation and cover all the basics of e-bikes. And let's start with the most simple. What is an e-bike? So an e-bike, the way we define it is it's basically like a regular bike with a few additional components. Many have a display or a computer. They all have a battery where they store their energy, and they all have a motor of some kind that actually allows you to propel yourself. Pedal assist. We'll talk a little bit about what that means. They come in a lot of different shapes and sizes, especially over the last few years. They've proliferated considerably. So you have some e-bikes that look like this. You've got a motor right here. It's a mid-drive motor. You've got a battery on the down tube, fenders, front suspension, a front and rear rack. This is what I would describe as kind of a utilitarian, around town, commuter style e-bike. We also have e-bikes that are small and folding and have built-in batteries in the down or in the tube right here, and a hub drive motor. This is a great kind of bike if you have to combine different modes of transportation, train or bus, or maybe you fly for work occasionally or carpool. Having a folding e-bike can be really helpful for that first mile, last mile part of your journey. You've got e-bikes that don't even really look like e-bikes, that are high performance road bikes with very slim batteries built into the down tube and a motor that you can't really hear or hardly feel. You've got e-bikes that look a little bit retro and kind of look like an old moto, like the Super 73. I have a coworker who recently bought one of these and just smiles and grins everywhere she goes. You've got e-bikes that are cargo bikes like this that allow you to carry kids and dogs and groceries and all kinds of stuff. And we'll dedicate a little bit of tonight's presentation looking at the specific utility of these cargo e-bikes, because this is where we really start to get into the territory of replacing vehicle trips when you have the extra capacity to carry life with you, which happens. So why choose an e-bike? You might be considering it yourself, now that there's a new rebate program. And there are a few studies that come out, but one not quite as popular as this one. A big study that came out a few years ago that looked at 1,800 e-bike users across North America. And prior to buying an e-bike, just about half of them rode daily or weekly. And after buying an e-bike, that number jumped considerably up to 91%. So when they bought the e-bike, their behavior changed pretty considerably. In terms of motivations, where people are coming from, why they're excited about potentially purchasing an e-bike, a lot of people are looking to replace vehicle trips, lower their own carbon emissions. Many people like the idea of riding with less effort. I like biking. I do it all the time. I don't always want to work out. I want to just sometimes get myself from point A to point B, very much like we would think about getting in a car. We just need to get ourselves from point A to point B, not going for a joyride. And then you've got a lot of other reasons. People think about e-bikes for recreation, keeping up with friends or partners, or being able to go further. They live or work in a hilly area. If you're a Santa Cruz County resident, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Longer distances, it's a cost-effective form of transportation. The list goes on. Once people have e-bikes, this is what they found. So in these categories, this is how people generally related to having their e-bike. for some, it allowed them to keep up with others. It's fun. It kind of keeps all the fun parts of biking and eliminates the parts that aren't enjoyable, like working hard or breathing hard, languishing up hills. And overall, people just commented that it's an overall enjoyable experience. So people are getting out for more rides of more types with e-bikes and having a little bit of extra support. We have a lot of testimonials and people that we work with professionally and friends of the org. So we've included some testimonials to kind of help bring some of those stories to life. One of which is Maya Lene. She's a professor at San Francisco State and is teaching remotely still. And so she's kind of all over the place between the Bay Area and San Francisco, Santa Cruz, and a little bit of Las Vegas. And she recently got a Turn Vectron. And she has a little video that I want to share with you. She can share her experience.
Everybody, my name is Maya Lene, and I'm a health educator, and I'm a health consultant for the Black Health Matters Project in Santa Cruz. I wanted to share my favorite way to get out. It is e-biking. So I like the great outdoors. I like to get fresh air, and while we're sheltering in place, it's just a great way to get out and get to see your city in a way that you never get to see it otherwise. So if you're in a car, you just don't see things in a way that you do on a bike. So when I got this baby, I got to explore Santa Cruz in a way that I never got to before. So I decided to get the electric assist bike because I don't really like riding up hills on a regular bike. So those really hard, tough hills with the high grade, e-bikes get you right up there, and that really changes the game for me. It makes things really accessible for folks who are not able to ride regular bikes, and that's why I really love it. We're kind of a community. We always kind of run into each other and talk about how much we love our e-bikes. An additional thing about this bike, it's called the Turn Vectron. Turn's the company and Vectron is the model, is that it folds. So it's a foldable bike. I just fold it right up. I put it in my trunk. That way I don't have to worry about a rack or anything like that. I can go anywhere and just bike. And that's why I love it so much. The battery holds a really long charge, and I can't say.
She can't say enough. The video got cut off, but she can't say enough about having her e-bike. So let's get into a little bit more of the specifics. We're back on Slido here, and we want to talk about the different types of e-bikes that we find in shops or online. So pick from this list, and I'll give you the right answer afterwards, but I just wanted to see where people are at. Which of these four is not a class of e-bike? A maximum 20 mile per hour pedal assist, max 20 assist with the throttle, max 28 pedal assist, or max 35 assist. What do we have? And I'm intentionally not showing the right answer yet, but I see some answers coming in, so I will show it in just a moment. And once again, if you haven't joined us on Slido yet, you can scan this QR code that's on your screen right now, or you can go to slido.com and use this code to join us. All right. Okay, let's have a look. All right. Okay, so most of you got it. Yes, accurate. So a max 35 mile per hour assist is not a recognized class of e-bike. The other three are. So let's have a look. E-bike regulations in California follow what you see on your screen. There are a lot of different regulations that are in various stages of pending, developing, adopted across the country. But here in California, we recognize three types of e-bikes, or three classes of e-bikes. Class 1 and 2 assist up to 20 miles per hour. One is just pedal assist. It just gives you support while you're pedaling. The other one has pedal assist and throttle. So it's got a little button on the handlebars that allows you to, once you're pedaling, you can sustain some momentum with the throttle, but it still taps out at 20. So if you're trying to go faster than that, you need to do it under your own power. And those are treated the same that regular bikes are. So same helmet requirements, you can ride them in all the same places. When it comes to class 3 e-bikes, they're a little bit different. For one, they assist up to 28 miles per hour, which if you've gone 28 miles an hour on a bike, that's pretty fast. You do have to wear a helmet regardless of age. And technically speaking, you can't ride them on multi-use bike paths. That said, you can ride a class 3 e-bike the same speed and with the same etiquette as any kind of bike. So really, you're not technically supposed to be there, and you can be a safe and respectful bike rider wherever you might be. So what's the big difference between me on a regular bike, or you on a regular bike, and you on an e-bike? And we tried to put this in really simple terms and things that we can think about. So obviously on a regular bike, you're the motor, that's how you're propelling it. And we start to throw in some language around power or watts, and you'll see that around motor types and batteries. So just to put it in a little bit of context, an average individual commuting to work at 12 or 13 miles an hour, putting in medium effort, is probably producing somewhere between 60 and 100 watts of power. An e-bike, on the other hand, a lot of the motors start at around 250 watts and go up to 750. So that can be 2 or 3 or 4 times what you're capable of doing yourself. The weight, obviously, you have a motor, you have a battery, you have other components. The bike generally is a little bit more robust. So you do pay a weight penalty. On average, e-bikes are heavier, although some are incredibly light, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But you get a higher average speed. If you're using pedal assist, then you're gonna start shaving time off all of your trips. And this photo right here is of Latria Graham. She has a pretty inspiring story. She rode a bike as a child, and when she was in high school, her dad got into a really severe bike crash and injured himself, and it kind of scared her straight from bikes pretty much from that point on. And it took about 20 years, and 20 years later, she's a journalist and a writer, and somebody had suggested to her, hey, you really got to try out this e-bike, the one that's pictured here. I think you'll have a blast, and it might help you kind of get back into it. And she did, and she loved it. And now she is just a full-on e-biker. And it was this type of a bike that kind of got her from feeling, in the beginning scared, and then like she didn't have stamina or the physical ability, and then she was able to get back out there, and now she loves riding her e-bike all the time. I can send the link to Oswaldo to share. It's a really great story that you can read online. This is Mark Davidson. He lives in the hills of Santa Cruz Mountains in Scotts Valley and commutes about 10 miles one way. And for him, the e-bike has enabled him to do a scenic tour, a scenic route when he does his bike commute. It allows him to connect with nature on his way to work and on his way home from work. And he's got kind of a hybrid style trekking e-bike. So Mark's a big time e-bike proponent. I see him around. All right, let's talk a little bit about cost. This is a theme, with the rebate, getting some money towards an e-bike, but understanding it against the cost of a car. And we're doing this exercise, this look at it, because we think about an e-bike as a good way of replacing many vehicle trips. So in this instance, you look at year one cost for an e-bike versus a used car financed over 4 years at 6%. And used cars are, I don't know if any of you are looking at used cars right now, but with everything, they're really expensive. And so this might even be a little bit outdated. But if you were to look at a $2,500 e-bike financed over 12 months at 0%, which is fairly common to find a zero interest loan at a lot of retailers or shops, then you have these immediate savings. Obviously, you're not spending much or anything on fuel. And we'll talk specifically around electricity and charging and how much that runs a little bit later. But you can look at the cost in year one, and then over 4 years, it really starts to add up. So obviously, this represents a little bit of a purist model where you don't have a car and you only use an e-bike. Probably for most of us, it's somewhere in between. You maybe have a vehicle or a car that you use sometimes, but if you start to really replace a lot of your driving, you start saving on maintenance and fuel and cost to own and operate your car, and then you're spending less money and you're having a great quality of life with a bike or an e-bike. In terms of e-bike price range, it varies widely. So 1,000 below, you have a lot of conversion kits or direct market e-bikes things that you can find at Costco or Amazon, you know, $400, $500, $600. These are often pretty low quality, cheaper bikes or kits that you can convert regular bikes to. As you work your way up the price range, you start to get in the 1,000 to 2,000, some direct market bikes, but also some bikes that are carried at local shops like Bicycle Trip. Actually, Oswaldo mentioned that already. More often in that price range, you're finding hub drive motors. Once you get into the 2 to 4 range, you start getting mid-drive motors, batteries that are integrated into the down tube. And then as you go up from there, you get into kind of specialty types, cargo bikes, mountain bikes, high-end performance road bikes, also around town utility bikes that are just spec'd to the nines. But you know, e-bikes can cost you $800 and they can cost you $8,000. So there's a lot to pick from. What are you paying for? So what's in that cost? So the difference between a $1,500 direct-to-consumer bike and say a $3,000 bike you might find in a local shop is a kind of a variety of things. One is the business model of the bike manufacturer. Are they sending it directly to you? Are you going online and ordering it and they're shipping it to you for you to finish assembly and take care of yourself? Or are you going through a bike dealer, you know, where you have a salesperson, somebody who's helping you figure out what kind of bike you want? Bike dealers obviously have to have their margins and run their business. So on average, bikes are more expensive in store. But with that, you get some additional support. You get, it's easier to process warranties. You have service packages. You have somebody that you can call or talk to help troubleshoot. You can bring your bike in to diagnose weird noises or things that might be going wrong. Also, the component quality, the actual materials that you're getting, the frame, the battery, the motor, the components, the tires, all of those things can lead to a more expensive bike. And then, as I mentioned, is the type of bike also specialty. So electric mountain bikes, for example, tend to be more expensive, as do cargo bikes. Commuter bikes are a little bit more standardized. They can be, you can find those at sub 2,000. Folding townie bikes, a little bit cheaper as well. So what I'd love to hear from you all out there is, what kind of riding do you do most of the time right now? Just kind of as a baseline. And you'll see where I'm going with this in a moment. Okay, so we've got recreation and exercise, commuting, errands, some leisure riding. Okay, some good representation across the board. Okay, so pretty strong in the recreation and exercise category. So stay there on Slido, and I'm going to put a new question up. What kind of riding would you want to do on an e-bike? So slightly different question. Okay, wow. All right, so errands coming in strong, commuting, leisure riding. Oh, okay, wow. Okay, so errands coming in very strong on this one, but still a little bit of representation across the board. The beauty is you can find an e-bike that will allow you to do most of these things well. There is a little bit of fine tuning depending on what kind of riding you want to do, which we'll talk about, but this is good. This is good to know. Thanks, everyone. Okay. So choosing the right e-bike can be challenging, but here are some tips. So we have kind of the main types of categories of riding that you do, and then what kind of riding do you want to do, and thinking about what we just saw, maybe a lot of errands or around town, groceries, store, kids, all that kind of stuff. We recommend trying to find a bike that will match the riding you're doing about 75% of the time. For example, if you are planning on going to the grocery store, running errands, and mostly doing around town riding, you probably don't need to get an electric mountain bike. That one is more expensive, has knobby tires, the geometry is completely different. You probably want to go with a cargo bike or a town bike or something like that. Or, you know, the inverse of that being true. If you're going to mountain bike most of the time, get a mountain bike. So let's spend a little bit more time thinking, for everybody that's tuning in tonight, what are the qualities that are important to you in an e-bike? And we've got a range to pick from here. This kind of helps you filter some of your values and your personal economy and things through. Well, if I have a lot to choose from, what are the things that really matter to me when considering an e-bike? It can be a little different from an analog bike, say, because you have increased versatility and uses. And I think if we think about e-bikes as a potential car replacer or vehicle replacer, then not surprisingly, quality and reliability is paramount. Okay, this is interesting. This is great. So quality and reliability coming in very strong. Sufficient range on charge, so you can go out and do your rides in a day or a week and not have to feel like you have range anxiety. A lighter bike, that's helpful if you have to lift it upstairs or into a car or on a bus or something like that. Versatility of uses, low price point, warranty and service. Okay, super. Thanks everybody. These are good exercises to go through when you're thinking about e-bikes. So cover kind of the top line frequently asked questions that we get about e-bikes. How long will my battery last? So the vast majority of e-bikes available today in the bike shop or online are coming with lithium-ion batteries. And generally speaking, they are given a life cycle range of 3 to 5 years and or 700 to 1,000 charge cycles. I'll give you my personal experience against this kind of industry standard. I've had my electric cargo bike for 3.5 years. I have 7,300 miles on it. I use it probably 6 days a week, and I have for the entire life of the bike. And I have 2 batteries on my cargo bike, and I've gone through about 160 charge cycles. So if I had 1 battery, you basically double that. So 320 charge cycles with that much use in 3.5 years. And my batteries are still holding, they're still in good shape. Part of that is how you take care of it. Are you leaving it in really hot conditions? Are you leaving it in freezing cold? Are you leaving it uncharged for months at a time? For me, I've just used my bike consistently since the day I bought it. So my batteries are in pretty good health as far as battery health goes. How far you'll go on a charge is pretty varied depending on how much you're carrying, what kind of hills, terrain, weight, all of that. So generally speaking, on eco mode, which is the lowest level of assist, you can, on some models of e-bikes, get close to 100 miles on a charge. With max assistance, like the most assistance that your motor will give you, you draw a lot of energy from your battery. You're probably looking at somewhere 15 to 35 miles. And you'll get to know what your bike is capable of. And remember, a lot of the time you're working too. So it's not all the e-bike doing the work. And then can you charge an e-bike via a normal household plug? Yes. Again, the vast majority of commercially available e-bikes, you can plug it in while it's on the bike, outside in a garage, or you can remove your battery, bring it indoors and charge it that way too. What's been going on with e-bikes the last few years? You probably have heard this or read this, but e-bikes are having their moment, and they have been for a couple of years, and it just seems to be on a meteoric rise. So you can just take stock from the fact that 2018 to 2019, e-bike sales grew by 51%. Then 2019 to 2020, 190, and then 2020 to 2021, 240%. It's the fastest growing bike category, including all bike types: mountain, road, gravel, BMX, you name it. E-bikes are the fastest growing, and the interest in e-bikes by a quick Google trend search also is demonstrated on this graph. So if you're hearing about it a lot more, it's because a lot more people are thinking and talking about it. And New e-bike companies are sprouting up. There's new e-bike rebate programs sprouting up. So there's a lot of attention and momentum around e-bikes right now. Viewing it from a technology perspective, the first e-bike patent actually came in 1897, believe it or not. There's been a couple of advancements since the initial patent. This was an e-bike that Ecology Action helped dispense about 1,600 of through an Air Resources District grant from 2000 to 2007. You can see how different and kind of old school this e-bike is. Really big, heavy battery and a motor hanging off the back end. And now today we have bikes that look like this: integrated, dense lithium-ion batteries, small motors, a lot of pedaling efficiency. Also things like smartphone integration and GPS tracking. It's pretty impressive. Some e-bikes even have a power meter, so you can really dynamically interact with your bike, knowing how much you're putting in and how much your bike is putting in. If you ever want to just like take a deep dive on that, it's pretty fascinating. So there are two main types of motors that we find on e-bikes. There's a hub drive and a mid drive, and they have their advantages and their disadvantages. I'm just going to run you through the two. In terms of cost, hub drive motors are more affordable. Mid drive motors are more expensive. In terms of distance and efficiency, hub drive motors are a little bit, they're more cadence and motion sensitive. So they're kind of doing the work alongside you, not necessarily in tandem with you. And that's in comparison to mid drives, which the motor is directly where you're putting power into the pedals. So it is very closely working with you and how much power you're putting in. And in a lot of ways, it's a way more efficient motor for that regard. And it uses what gears and what power you're putting in to modulate what kind of efficiency it's giving you. In terms of weight, hub drives tend to be heavier overall as a unit, and they also are positioned in the wheel, and most often the rear wheel, which means that the weight is also unevenly distributed on the bike, versus a mid-drive motor is right where the cranks is. So it's basically right in the middle, and it's a lower center of gravity. With hill climbing, again, because of the efficiency I just mentioned, the mid-drive motor helps a little bit more when you're climbing on hills. There's more torque sensitivity and more response to what you're putting into the pedals. The hub drive motors can be really powerful, but it's more often just a hub drive motor doing the work than working with you in tandem uphill. When it comes to drivetrain wear and tear, a hub drive motor wears out your components less than a mid-drive motor because the power is going directly into the chain on a mid-drive motor. So I consume about one chain every 1,000 miles on my mid-drive cargo bike, which is around standard, talking to other people with mid-drive motors. All right, so this is a really fun one, and I'll talk about it, but first I want you to guess. How far will an e-bike take you on an equivalent of a gallon of gas? I'm not going to give any hints here. Okay, 500 to 1,000 coming in strong, 100 to 200, and 1,000 to 5,000 miles. Imagine your gas tank, how much gasoline that is, and also imagine how far that would take you in the car that you maybe own. Okay, all right, so we got a little bit of a mix of opinion here. All right, let's have a look. So when we talk about vehicle efficiency and we talk about environmental benefits, i.e. Where your electricity comes from, kind of what 3CE and Oswaldo was talking about earlier, there is both the vehicle efficiency and then the composition of the fuel and the electricity. So Tesla Model 3, one of the most fuel efficient electric vehicles on the market, and it gets a 140 miles per gallon equivalent. So that's how efficient it uses the electricity to power in terms that we know. With e-bikes, it's 1,000 to 5,000 miles, miles per gallon equivalent, which is getting you from, say, Santa Barbara over to New York City. Well, if you're in the middle, that's like 3,000, 3,500 miles. So e-bikes are phenomenally efficient machines. Bicycles themselves are already the most efficient man-made machine in terms of the energy we put in and what we get out. And then you add a small e-bike motor and a battery, and you increase the weight a little bit, but then you're working with it, and you have a really exceptionally efficient vehicle for getting yourself around. And then you look at this map here, and it kind of plots around the country based on the different kinds of electricity that's being generated, renewable energy, coal, natural gas, how that translates to in terms of your actual emissions from the electricity being generated. So bottom line here, electric vehicles are efficient. Electric bicycles are wildly efficient. And just to give you a little bit of context, again, my electric cargo bike I've had for 3.5 years. I've pedaled 7,300 miles, and I've spent about $20 total charging it. I filled up my car tank of gas for the first time in a while. It was $60, and that gets me about 275 miles. So we are talking about incredibly efficient vehicles here, which is a great segue into, can a bike replace a minivan? Short answer, yes, but let's dive into it a little bit. There's different kinds that will actually allow you to do this. This is just a fun GIF that kind of goes through different configurations on, actually, this is the bike that I have. This is a Turn GSD. So it's a small short tail cargo bike, which I get because I don't have a lot of space to store it, and I can store it vertically, but you can pack a lot. Groceries, kids, and school supplies, absolutely. A push bike, picnic gear, surfboard, 48 pack of toilet paper. You have to go to Costco, anything, you got it. We have a local friend, Alex Yazbek. He's a civil engineer with the city of Watsonville. He actually builds cargo bikes himself. The Box Bike Collective is what he calls. And I'm just going to read verbatim his quote because it really says it all. Feel the breeze, bask in the sunshine, and not stress about finding a parking spot. Yes, please. Every e-bike is a win for our community. Less pollution, fewer cars, safer streets, more human connection. Just try riding an e-bike without smiling and waving at everyone you see, which I can attest. It's hard to not smile and want to wave and ring your bell every time you're riding an e-bike. If you haven't done it yet, you got to try it. There's sometimes, I would say it's decreasing in the frequency that I hear this, but sometimes people say, oh, e-bikes are totally cheating. Like, I don't want to do an e-bike. Well, probably the most basic question or response is cheating in what? If you're replacing vehicle chips, there's no question that there's no cheating. If they're talking about cheating yourself out of exercise, the data suggests otherwise. So there's a couple other studies that have polled and studied e-bike riders. And one of them found that e-bike riders tend to get the same level of physical activity as regular bikes because of the unique features of the e-bike. People cover more ground, and they tend to choose their e-bike in place of what was going to be a car trip. So they're actually doing more trips overall and getting more riding in. And then in a different study, looking at heart rate and actual metabolic and physiological activity, one study looked at e-mountain bikers, and 93, almost 94% of people had a similar heart rate riding analog bikes versus e-bikes. So I can personally attest, again, riding my e-bike, I get my heart rate up and I'm breathing. I'm just staying out of that last 15% where I'm sweating profusely, breathing very heavily, and my heart is pounding. But I'm definitely getting some exercise. A lot of different ways to go about it, especially when you're carrying a kid. This is Marilyn Rocky. She's a local principal at Delmar Elementary School, and she's got a video for you.
I love my e-bike because it provides me with everything I need at the end of my day. If I just need to just think a little bit about how things went at school and what I could do to make things better, It's right there for me on my cruise home. The other great part is if I need a workout, it's built in because I have to get to my house and I'm on my bike. So I can ride quickly, pedal hard, and kind of blow out all the carbon that I have accrued during the course of the day. I love my e-bike.
Kind of a funny analogy, blowing out all the carbon you've accrued, but point well taken. She's a big time bike commuter and does a pretty solid bike commute, 8 or 9 miles each way. So cargo bikes, like I said, we were going to talk a little bit about that. They really do have a phenomenal amount of applications. When you combine the utility of a cargo bike with an electric motor and a battery, like it's basically a minivan. Carrying dogs, which I do, carrying kids, which a lot of people do, grocery shopping, gardening supplies. This is me carrying 5,000 paper cups for bike to work day a couple years ago. You can do a lot of it. It just requires a little bit of creativity, but it's super fun, and you can carry a surprising amount on a bicycle and get yourself, especially for all of those trips that are 5 miles or less around where you live. E-bikes can knock out a lot of them. There are a few safety considerations for e-bikes in particular, in addition to regular bike safety. E-bikes tend to go faster on average, as we've discussed. It's important to note that drivers often misjudge the rate of speed for cyclists overall, and especially so for people on e-bikes who may be going 20 or 25 miles per hour. And so it's important for you to note when you're out on the roadway that people aren't expecting you to come up as quickly as you are. Moderating your speed, because you have more mass, you have more momentum, you need to be mindful of your slowdown and stopping times. If you're not comfortable or familiar with your e-bike, it's really important to practice before heading out into a busy street or riding in traffic. And then the pedal assist on different e-bike models feel differently. So it's good to practice and get familiar with it so you know how it interacts with what power you're putting in, coming out of turns and accelerating, that kind of thing. Oswaldo mentioned the Central Coast Community Energy e-bike rebate. There are a couple other ones that are in the general region, a little bit more around the Monterey Bay. If you are a Santa Cruz resident and happen to work downtown, there's a rebate that's now live. There's the one Oswaldo mentioned with Central Coast Community Energy. The Monterey Bay Air Resources District has an e-bike incentive program. It's income qualified up to $1,000. And we expect later this year, the California statewide e-bike rebate program will be live. Details TBA, but there is $10 million earmarked for rebates. So it is an exciting time for e-bike incentives and e-bikes overall. And if you're even remotely curious about it, I encourage you to take the next step and go try one, because then the rest will just fall into place. Okay, right at 8 o'clock. So I think what we'll do, we've got, it looks like some questions came in on Zoom. We got some questions here on Slido. Oswaldo, I'm gonna maybe tag you in here to just help monitor for questions. What we'll try to do is knock out as many questions as we can. We'll go, these actually don't look like questions, these look like comments. So maybe we'll be able to get through all the Q&A. If we don't get through, we'll answer the ones that are currently here. If we don't get to all of them, we can follow up with you afterwards in an email.
Yeah, I can go ahead and read some of the questions in the Q&A if that works for you.
Yeah, that's great. I'm just going to bring it up here too.
Got it. So we have a question from Diane. I live in the second floor apartment. How much do bikes weigh? And I know this is something you covered, but if you can just go ahead and share again.
Yeah, great question, Diane. There's a wide range. So kind of average across a variety of models, you're probably looking at 50 to 60 pounds for a kind of a full stacked e-bike. There are many manufacturers that are making bikes that are in the 35 to 30 pound range. Those tend to be higher end performance models. Specialized makes kind of a hybrid town bike that's around 32 pounds. That is great for getting around town, and it's lighter weight, has a smaller motor and a smaller battery. Okay.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, you bet.
For Mike Turner, where and how do you recommend to demo or rent an e-bike? In Santa Cruz somewhere? I would like to test
Yeah.
a variety.
Yeah, good question, Mike. So a little bit of a carryover from COVID. A lot of the bike shops that were doing e-bike demos are not doing them currently to like take it out for an extended ride. But any shop in town that carries e-bikes will allow you to go in and say, hey, I'm interested in buying one. They'll let you take it out and kind of give it a spin. It's probably not going to be very long or extended. Some additional options to consider. There's the Specialized Experience Center, which has primarily e-mountain bikes that you could take out for a day if you wanted to. And then coming very soon, Gazelle e-bikes, they're opening an experience center on the west side of Santa Cruz, and they have an entire fleet, I think 10 different models of e-bikes that are going to be available for multi-hour demos. And I think they're supposed to launch, I think they're supposed to open in March. So coming up next month. Good question though. All right. Looks like our next one here is another one from Mike. How safe are e-bikes for locking up and not getting stolen while in the store? That's a great question. E-bikes in general are kind of a higher end type of bike. They can look flashy. So a couple things to consider. One is if you're going to invest in an e-bike, invest in a quality bike lock and make sure that you're locking up your bike properly, which means locking up both wheels and your frame to the post that you're parked next to. Also, many e-bikes or several e-bike companies either come with or have the option of adding on a lock on the frame itself. So you can actually lock a wheel to the frame and at least immobilize it. Somebody could pick it up and carry it away. But if you did that in combination with, say, a cable and a U-lock, you'd be in pretty good shape. And then just the nuanced part of that is just be mindful of where you park it and for how long. But those a couple steps will go a long way. Oh, this is a great question. If e-bikes run out of juice, how much more difficult is it to pedal compared to a regular bike? In my experience, a lot more difficult. So my cargo bike's 75 pounds because I have it with 2 batteries and all these other accessories. I've had it die on me a couple times, and it basically just feels like you're pedaling a 75-pound bike. It's really heavy and slow. It's possible. On the lighter end of the spectrum, especially like if you were to buy a bike today, a lot of the motors have improved considerably since I got mine and have a lot less friction. So in the event that your battery dies, you'd be still pedaling a heavy bike, but it might feel relatively smooth and you just need to take your time. Okay, great one from Nancy. Yes. So Nancy and Oswaldo, feel free to chime in here, but our understanding is that all the 3 different agencies that have rebates active in the Monterey Bay area are enthusiastic about you stacking rebates to let the dollars go further. Only, each agency is only able to do what they can. So if you combine forces with other agencies, that means you as the end user can have a lot more savings, and maybe it makes it more possible for you to get into an e-bike. Yeah.
So for the replay, we will be posting it on our YouTube page, and then we'll also share it in an email with everybody who's attended or registered for this webinar.
Okay. And Nancy, I think we talked about the bike theft, but I'm happy to send Oswaldo a couple of tips for locking that he can email out to everybody afterwards. Okay. Wow. All right. So you want to take a first plug at this, Oswaldo, for Catherine's question?
Yeah, so Catherine, I will just answer your first question. I'll pass it over to Matt to answer the rest of the questions. Is the application and information available in Spanish? So for the application for the Electrify Your Ride e-bike rebate, we are currently working on it. So we've actually already translated translated it. We're just working on actually making sure that the application works before we put it out to the public, just to avoid any potential glitches. So more to come on that. In terms of the information being available in Spanish, we do already have that information translated in Spanish on our website. You would just need to click on the Translate to Spanish toggle button that's located usually on the top half of all of the web pages on our website.
Awesome. Thanks, Oswaldo. And just kind of quickly getting through your other ones, Catherine, the enhanced theft deterrent features, the most common one that you'll find on a lot of e-bikes is that it has a frame lock built in. So it just makes it a little bit easier for you to secure the frame to itself and immobilize it, in addition to other locks. Age limit on using e-bikes? Nope. For type 1, 2, and 3, there's no age limit, but there are helmet guidelines for class 3. Everybody has to wear a helmet for class 3, and then if you're under 18 in California, you have to wear a helmet regardless. Typical cost of a lithium battery replacement, it can range, but they are expensive. In my research, anywhere from $300 to $800 depending on the manufacturer. They do, if you take care of your batteries though, they'll last you for years. You'll get a lot of good mileage out of it. And then, will this require cities and or businesses to provide specialized bike parking? No, but that's a good point. I think in general, I've heard from a lot of people that it would be great to have more bike parking. So I would, if that's the case where you live, I would definitely get in touch with your local electeds and voice that concern or that interest in getting more bike parking.
Let's go ahead and answer 3 more questions, and then we can go ahead and follow up with some of the outstanding questions in a write-up to all of you guys later.
And I think, David, we answered the bike theft question, so I think we're covered there. Heather, hey Heather, good to see you. Is there any battery recycling programs? My used bike battery stopped working and I don't know what to do with it. That is a great question. I don't know of any big commercial battery recycling programs. Generally speaking, if you have a battery from the original manufacturer of the bike too, and it's a warranty issue, they will take it back from you. If it's just run through its serviceable life, I think most likely what happens to it is it gets decommissioned, maybe scrapped, and ultimately sent to landfill. Electric unicycles qualify for rebates. I don't think there are any, at least in, well, actually, Oswaldo, do you have, I think it's all class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes are eligible, correct?
Yeah, that would be eligible. We've also had applications for electric tricycles. So
got it. Awesome.
That all qualifies for our program.
Okay. All right, and then I think our last one that we'll get to answer now tonight, there's a lot of great ones coming in, is it harmful to park in the summer heat? So generally speaking, like I mentioned before, batteries don't like extreme temperatures in the high or low ranges. So if you are consistently, regularly exposing it to, let's say, triple-digit heat, direct sunlight for days, weeks, months at a time, it will likely degrade your battery. So either park it in the shade or remove your battery, bring it inside with you. But I would say generally summer heat repeatedly on your battery is gonna be tough for your equipment. Okay. I think we're almost, yeah, that's almost all of them. I think, Oswaldo, if it's okay with you, I think we only have a couple more questions. We could just knock it out right now.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, I think we're close. Nona, suggestions on a trunk mounted rack for a specialized e-bike cruiser model, older car, and fully permanent mounted rack is not an option. Got it. Trunk mounted racks, when you're doing them with straps, generally have a lower weight capacity. So off the top of my head, I'm not aware of a great one that would be a reliable recommendation for, I don't know, maybe a 60-pound e-bike. We probably need to just look at your specific circumstances, which I'm happy to explore with you. we can look at what e-bike you are or what you have and how much it weighs, and then look at your car option and rack options and try to find the best solution. E-bikes with regenerative braking. Nope. There are none that are commercially available. I think primarily this is due to the fact that, for regenerative braking, you need a good amount of mass and momentum to have it work. And you don't have that like you do in like a hybrid vehicle or an electric vehicle. So I have not seen regenerative braking on any e-bike commercially available. Okay. All right. I think that's. Oh, and then the last one, any chance of hooking up automatic brake lights to light when you hit brakes? So there are some e-bike models that have basically braking lights. So a running light that's there, and then when you depress your brake lever, it actually illuminates and it gets even brighter. So there are some models like that are out there currently available.
I've seen a couple of questions too about recommending reputable sites for info on brands, bike shops that sell these particular e-bikes.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to Santa Cruz County. We have we're in a good position with a lot of really great locally owned bike shops with super professional staff, good brands. Bicycle Trip, Epicenter, Spokesman, Current, Ebikes all have really solid lineups of e-bike models available. All of the shops in Santa Cruz County either carry or are dealers of brands that carry e-bikes. Once we get into other parts of the territory, I'm less familiar, so I wouldn't be able to speak to it off the cuff.
Yeah, and in terms of how we support the local bike shops, as an agency, we're not necessarily in the position to promote any particular bike shop, but we do want to support them through the rebate, right? So if you were to purchase an electric bike from a locally owned bike shop here in the Central Coast, again, you're getting that $100 additional incentive that's added on to either to your base incentive or to the income qualified incentive through our program.
Yeah, great. And I'm happy to we can share, we'll send out my contact info. If you have any questions about, bike shops or brands that are carried locally, I'm happy to follow up with you and give you that information. I think the only last question, and then we've totally covered it, we're totally good, is any precautions needed for riding in the rain? And for that, yes, in short, you lose traction when surfaces are wet. And so when you're pedaling a regular bike or an e-bike, it's important to avoid puddles, give yourself more time to slow down and stop. Generally, things are more slick, so take corners carefully. And then maybe one of the biggest things of all is that visibility is diminished for all road users, including people who are riding. So it can just be a little bit more hazardous out there. So I think the simple answer is just ride more carefully when it's raining across all those areas. Okay, I think we got it.
Awesome.
We're there.
Awesome. So first of all, I want to thank our audience for tuning into tonight's presentation. I'm glad we had a pretty good turnout to learn more about e-bikes. I also want to thank our featured speaker, Matt Miller, for providing such an in-depth technical presentation. I feel a lot more confident myself going in to purchase an e-bike with the information that I've just learned. Just as a follow-up, we will be providing sort of a summary of these resources. Matt and I will be working together to just kind of compile some resources that you can reference, as well as the recording of the YouTube video so that you can watch it at a later time. So with that said, you do have our contact information. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We hope you have a good rest of your night. And again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.